Michigan got brought up as a state without a state. It's a lot different than a state with a city with a million people, isn't it? What are people doing to get it back? Some people don't want it, just ready to go back. But we're the only one that's ever lost. Okay. They're not going. Right. They'll move to Chicago or Grand Rapids.
We had one more chair, but I mean, you and I can just sit on top of each other here, but
Like we do.
yeah.
Just decided to pop up my email. So you see on the screen, so my email is just.
Yeah, we did. That's okay. You didn't have any swear words. We have some other electives. I just saw a school board member or library board trying to see if there's others. And we just want to say there's other electives in the room. Let's stand up.
I know, but can we talk about Benson? Can we talk about Benson?
Carrie, right? Yes. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Ryan Dans. I knew it was going to be great. I'm Jordana. I'm with the Recovery Mobile Group. Yep. We're a nurse practitioner.
You're going to give the same
So I know that you met with
I heard last
the
night.
Michigan Association before.
Now is not the time to jump ship.
279.
Like, that's kind of where you're at.
Yes. Yep, I've been working with Senator Erwin.
So I know you have
Did that pass out of the Senate?
Sure. Yeah, we have to have one extra.
If it hasn't, yeah,
I'm Larry
out of the
Perlman.
Senate,
Hi, Larry.
there is not enough time
Carrie's
left
my
for
rep.
me to be able
Oh, okay,
to
cool.
Yeah, and I know she's
still
pretty well.
Oh, nice.
It is not still
She's joining us. She's running a little late. She'll be here
And
soon.
Felicia
Oh, nice. Okay.
Hopefully, we get farther.
I'm kind of connected.
Yeah. Well, let me see if I can get us started
know
here.
if,
We're a little behind.
my campaign getting Republican votes in the House for this. So if they do, then there's a chance it'll happen.
We just are gonna run out of time here.
Yeah, we're running like
Yeah, really late.
happy to vote.
Friday, I almost headed to Holmes, but it's not.
Hi everyone, hope we're doing well. We're about to get
This
started.
Friday,
We're going to take a seat if you have one.
Sam, always happy to understand. My friend.
Thank you.
I was just gonna go to Holmes out of habit.
I was just there.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, because Sue will be here too. Yeah, we
Here, you should go in the middle. Who are we waiting on? Sue. Okay.
Hello. Of course.
Long time no see.
All right, well, we want to thank everybody for coming out today. We know that it's a busy time of the year for everyone with the holidays and everything, but hope you're all doing well and getting through. We know that there's kind of a lot that's happened post-election. We want to just have this time. The mission of this town hall was to not only welcome Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, but also to also to have an end of the year recap for your wonderful Ann Arbor delegation who represents us all so well. So we want to just talk about, any legislation. We're going to talk about lame duck. If you guys have any questions, there's going to be a good Q&A period for everybody to come up, ask questions. Give that hard, we can totally get that. Yes. But without further ado, I'll hand it off to the panelists so we can get started.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to kick everything off.
Hi, everyone. Hi, how's everyone doing? I'm going to stand up for a minute. This is really great. It's really wonderful to see all of you here. I want to thank these incredible local leaders for being a part of tonight as well. And I think I texted Jason after the election and was like, I want to check in with folks in Ann Arbor. Can we bring folks together? And you're like, sure. And here we are. Here we now are. And so I'm here tonight really for two things. One, to kind of check in with everyone. I mean, it's been a month, It's been quite a month. And it's going to be quite a few months to come, and maybe quite a few years. And so now on the other side of November 2024, really wanted to create a space for us to get together and talk to each other and listen to each other, and for us to hear from you about your worries, concerns, thoughts, needs for the months ahead. And the second thing I really want you all to leave here with tonight is a sense of optimism and hope. Because, number one, some of you might have been there 15 years ago when I first ran for Secretary of State in 2010. I think many of you were part of our team back then, and thank you. What I said back then, when the election didn't go our way, the same thing I said in 2016, the same thing I'm saying to you tonight. I'm not giving up, and neither should any of you. And that's the bottom line. Because particularly when you look over these last 6 years, 8 years, since November 2016, an extraordinary number of things have happened in our state. We've eliminated gerrymandering. You have, through your votes and your constitutional amendment. We've expanded democracy in this state to the point where we're just coming off the highest turnout election in our state's history, where half of the 5.7 million residents who voted before Election Day even began at an early voting center or from home. Why? Because you all and citizens all across the state passed ballot initiatives in 2018 and in 2022 to give every citizen that right. And that's why we saw a lot of citizens take advantage of that right. That's why we saw so many people vote in 2024 and in 2020 and in 2022. In fact, the last 3 elections, all of the ones we've had while I've served as Secretary of State, have been back-to-back the highest turnout elections in state history, and have jettisoned us to the top of the list for the best democracies, the best election administration in the country. That's all what we've done together. Not to mention, we protected reproductive freedom, enshrining that in our state constitution. We've seen the first Democratic trifecta in 40 years, and a lot of policy come out of the last 2 years. And I say all that to really emphasize that what's happened over the last several years in Michigan was not defined by what happened in November of 2016, but it was defined by what we all did next. And so when we think about the next decade for our state, for the people we care about and represent, for everyone in our state and even our country, many of whom are feeling the pain of an economy they feel has left them behind, many of them are feeling anxious and nervous just based on the sheer uncertainty of what could happen, or what, a lack of safety, a lack of fear, a great fear of what could happen due to a lack of safety in our schools, in our workplace, in our homes, in our communities. That anxiety, that fear is real. And as we feel all those things right now, as we recognize and sit with all those things, we have to recognize that what defines us now and into the future is not what happened on November 5th, 2024. It's going to be what we do now and what we do next to keep each other safe, to keep our economy strong, and to help ensure Michigan is that safe place where everyone can grow, live, and prosper. My goal as a mom, you guys saw my son here earlier, he's out there in the hall waiting for his dad, who by the way went to school here and grew up here, and his mom's here tonight. And by the way, there's another important mom here tonight, Liz Brader, whose son is the Director of Elections, Jonathan Brader. So Liz, also great to see you here tonight. Yes, thank you. But all that to say is I really want you to leave tonight with the recognition that yes, there's a lot of reasons to be worried right now and scared, and rightfully so, and we're all feeling that. But there's also a lot of reasons to be hopeful, and it's all going to be determined by our decision to not give up, and our decision to stay engaged, and our decision to fight and ensure that the people that we believe in and work with and protect every day, that they're safe and secure as well. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk to tonight, because these lawmakers up here have been on the front lines pushing for doing that work every day, and none of us are going anywhere. Even if term limits may suggest otherwise, we're all staying in this fight, we're all doing this work, we're all here for a reason, and we ask for all of you to still be in this fight with us and not feel discouraged or take any discouragement or any other feelings you might be having right now, and channel it into strength and courage and determination to make sure that we define Michigan for the next decade. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Secretary Benson. And I think now we want to certainly introduce ourselves as the state legislators here, because we have a wonderful assortment of folks from all over our districts here tonight. And thank you so much for being here. We are currently in the 23rd State House District, part of downtown Ann Arbor here. So I'm very happy to have you here in my district, and to have my colleagues here, and to be doing this town hall with us together, and Secretary Benson. My name is Jason Morgan. I'm serving going into my second term in the State House. Prior to that, served Sue. Come on up, Senator Shake.
Let me
check just one sec to see if my staff has anything for me.
Going into my second term here, and prior to this served as Washington County Commissioner for 6 years and Chair of the Board of Commissioners here. And so I've been doing this work for quite a while. Actually met Jocelyn back in 2010, 15 years ago. Yes, I was in college 15 years ago. And have known her ever since, and she's continuously been fighting for good things and to really focus on free and fair elections and all these amazing things that we've been working on together as the legislature and the secretary over these last few years. So glad to be with you all tonight, and we'll pass things along to my colleague Jennifer Conlon.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming tonight. What a great turnout. I am Jennifer Conlon, and I am the state rep for House District 48, which is northwest Ann Arbor, and then goes up into Livingston County. So I am what we call a frontline seat. I'm one of the seats that is a swing district, and that's unusual in Ann Arbor, but this came out of the redistricting and did allow us to pick up another seat. So my district goes from Ann Arbor to Howell. And very happy because I was reelected, and I will have a second term. Many of you helped with that, so thank you very much. Very pleased to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Irwin. I'm the state senator for the 15th district. My district runs from Ypsilanti down to Tecumseh, sort of straddling US 12 all the way down to Monroe County and Milan on the south side, and up here in the southern half of Ann Arbor. I get to share the city of Ann Arbor with Senator Schenck. Looking forward to talking about a few things tonight, but first I want to make sure that we do recognize the Secretary of State. She mentioned a lot of things that have changed in the last 4 years, but one thing I always like to recognize that has changed in the last 4 years, whenever the Secretary of State's in the room, is the experience at our Secretary of State's office. Right? Whatever else is going on in the world, whatever else is going well or not well in government, we know that the Secretary of State's office has actually changed. It's palpably better, and so I wanted to recognize you for that. It's just so striking how much different it is. And so before I pass along to my other colleagues to introduce themselves, I just want to say I hope that we have enough time to hear all your questions tonight, and I also want you to make sure you hear what we're doing and give us feedback on what we're doing to finish out this term, because I think there are two really important things that for us to be doing when we've got a couple weeks left. One is to make sure that we drive home and reflect the values that our voters sent us to Lansing to reflect, and the other is to make sure that we position our laws here in Michigan so that we can steel our citizens against whatever threats might be coming from a Trump administration. So I think there are some important things we can do in both those ways.
I'm State Rep Carrie Rangans, and I represent the part of downtown Ann Arbor that is the towny part of downtown Ann Arbor, not the student part. So actually Main Street west toward Manchester, Dexter, and then I have 5 townships in southeast Jackson County, and my district actually borders Jackson. So for folks in the room, you have representation from Wayne, Oakland, Livingston, and Jackson, as well as, and even Lenawee, as well as Washtenaw. So, the Washtenaw and Ann Arbor delegations even stretch beyond county borders. I'm proud to be working in my first term. I see some other elected folks in the room, Ann Arbor District Library member, Aiden Sova, and then Debbie Dingle, staff for Georgia, are here in the room too. So you should feel proud that you're represented on multiple levels of government, and we work really well together, and we actually really love each other, which is why I'm a little bit sad that our colleague Felicia Brayback isn't here tonight. She is being a good mom, and since we were in Lansing late every night last week, she is with her children tonight. So we're proud that she can be a good mom too, but we're a good team, so we work together with her, and any feedback you have for her or the incoming member, Morgan Foreman, who will be replacing her in the legislature, we're happy to take that back to them because we're a great team. Now to my teammate, Sue Schenck.
Hi, good evening. So I'm Sue Schenck. I represent the 14th district. I'm a senator, and I like to describe it as if you cut Washtenaw County like it was a grilled cheese. I represent the northern half, which goes from the northeastern part of Washtenaw County to almost the southwestern corner. And it's really great because the other thing I say after I describe this, like, Jeff Irwin and I agree on almost everything, so it's okay if you don't know who your senator is. I also represent 3/4 of Jackson County, and so It's really almost like a microcosm of Michigan in terms of some of the issues we have. We have super progressive people on the Old West Side who have a lot of priorities that Ann Arborites share around conservation and the environment and making sure that people who don't have a lot have a way to have more. And then we have people who are really just scraping by day to day. And so I think for me, it's been a really wonderful experience to get to know people across the district and to try to work those priorities together. And I believe they are shared by a lot of the district, and so that's been really great. And we'll talk more about specific issues. And I just want to say I see so many familiar faces out in the audience. It's really wonderful, and I appreciate how much, how warm and how welcoming everybody has been to me as your senator or as your other senator. And also, if I didn't say it, I'm a little rattled. I'm sorry I'm late. My father had a health emergency, and so I was trying over the phone to help sort out hospital options. So anyway, there's that. But so glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
So I will pass things back over to Secretary Benson, but just want to certainly thank our staff, Liam and Raina, thank you very much for being here. And also we had Diane O'Connell and Raina Bash from Ann Arbor Township here, a couple more of our local electeds. Did we miss any electeds who are here? If you are, stand up. We just want to make sure to thank you for coming. Okay, all right. We just want to make sure to appreciate you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
And with that, we will hand things back over to Secretary Benson.
Sure. Thanks. So, Senator Schenk, thank you for sharing also about your family. All of us come here, and a few of us have been juggling a lot today in terms of our families, and it reminds me of the fact that we all come to leadership with our full selves, with actually an understanding of a lot of the struggles and challenges that Michiganders are going through, because as we work to balance everything, we're encountering a lot of those same realities. And that's one of the things that, to me, came out of this 2024 election, this recognition of how important it is for leaders to actually talk about that, talk about the balancing act, talk about the need to, how we oftentimes spread ourselves thin to meet the needs of everyone in our worlds. And I'm sure many of you have those same stories. It's a part of, I hope, and this is, I'm a little off script, but part of what I hope in the next several years, in the next decade, that we can work on is making sure folks know that we know the struggles, we know the pain, we know the challenges. And part of what we're here tonight, frankly, is to hear from you on those things and answer those questions. I wanted to level set, as I did earlier in our intro as well, by thanking you all for coming out in a very busy time of year to have this conversation. I think so much of this moment, and particularly the next few years, it's going to be important for us to break through potential walls of isolation that may be built up through divisions or discord and chaos or confusion that can be created in lots of different ways, the federal, state, and local level, and really actually just come together and be together and share each other's stories and build that community and connectivity, because we all want our kids to be safe in school. We all want to be able to afford housing. We all want to be able to ensure that our families are taken care of and that healthcare is accessible to all. And we may all have different visions on how we get there, but the bottom line is we have this unity all across our purple state, and working to remind ourselves of those similarities, I think, is going to be the work that all of us have ahead of us. And it's good work. It's joyful work. It's also work that a lot of us did coming into this election cycle. I know a lot of you did as well. And as we think about and reflect on November, I wanted to level set this evening with a few facts and figures. Those of you who know me know I love data. I'm a big data person. We've certainly found with what we've done both in the Secretary of State offices and making government work better for everyone, and also in expanding democracy in our state, following the data and implementing best practices is kind of all we need to do. Come on in, say hi. This is Ryan Friedrichs, my husband, everyone. Just here. Child of Ann Arbor. Your mom's here. Thank you. Just wanted to
into the bathroom, so I'll carry on.
Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, the other reflection on this past November and is not just the data and the best practices that we implemented, but what we get out of that. So I already mentioned, we saw 5.7 million residents of Michigan vote. 3.3 million of those citizens voted prior to Election Day, before 7 a.m. even hit on November 5th. They voted in person in early voting centers. How many of you voted early in person? What? Or early, and you could also vote from home through the mail. How many voted from home through the mail? There you go. Yeah, whether you voted early in person or through the mail or from home, you saw how important those options were for many working families in our state. And I thought it was a great reflection of our success, and frankly our clerk's success. Jackie Beaudry in particular is extraordinary, and her staff, and in the Washtenaw County election staff as well, all came together to make folks know about those options and ensure they did, and also ensure that that everyone had access in a safe way to whatever option they chose to exercise. And so it was encouraging that we saw just over 1 million, I think it was 1.2 million people vote early in person at an early voting center in the first election ever when you could do that. And what that also means is we could probably expect those 1 million to keep coming back and voting that way in every election. Data shows in other states that usually what happens, and that number is going to grow. So it's very likely, though we're now pushing 80% of turnout, which is what we saw, 80%, which is frankly one of the highest in the country next to Minnesota, which used to be years ago an aspiration, and now here we were experiencing it. We are on track to actually just keep that going as long as these policies are in place and we have good professional administrators in place. And so my hope is that 2026 beats our midterm turnout in 2022, which was our highest midterm turnout election ever. What it also underscored, however, is how many first-time voters took advantage of those options. Over 800,000 of people who voted for the first time. Those were young voters, some were old voters, they voted all across the state, and that really also underscored the expansion of democracy. What we also saw, though, at the same time, we saw more young people voting than ever before and all of that. All of those numbers were great. We also saw the impact of misinformation. Whether it was information about candidates or information designed to sow seeds of doubt and discord about the security of our elections, we're going to continue to see that misinformation flow and try to influence policymakers, try to influence all of you, try to influence the electorate. But we really saw how important it is for all of us to combat that misinformation. And in areas where we had forums like this or trusted messengers spread trusted information, we saw increased confidence in our democracy and increased confidence in our election. But the work ahead, in part, is going to be also about helping to restore folks' confidence, not just in the voting process, but also in government itself. It's not lost on me that in Lansing today, just as it was 4 years ago, folks gathered in the state capitol to sign the elector certificates that the governor and I signed a few weeks ago and sent them to the National Archives. Now, 4 years ago, that moment was much different. There were people, fake electors, gathered outside the Capitol claiming to be the rightful electors. And there were, of course, folks inside with myself and the governor. There were the duly elected electors signing the forms. And here we are 4 years later, where you see a peaceful transition of power. We're certainly experiencing that now. But it also reminds us of how important it is for us to always have a peaceful transition of power, no matter who wins, and to be prepared to stand up to anyone, anytime, anywhere, no matter how powerful or wealthy they may be, who would try to interfere with that transition of power or the will of the voters. And we could see that again in the future, and we have to be prepared for that as well. And I know all of us as leaders are too. But in the midst of all of that, and the last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to our lawmakers to talk about lame duck, is the recognition that we all have a role to play, just as we all played a role these last 8 years in making sure not just the peaceful transfer of power and elections and all those things to continue to be successful, but also that our citizens are informed about what they're voting and what they're voting for and who they're voting for. Because there are a lot of forces out there that would seek to misinform every voter, first-time voters, young voters, older voters, and everyone in between. And so our charge really in the years ahead is partially going to be all of you tonight continuing to be, if you aren't already, ambassadors for that truth, ambassadors for that trusted information, and to help others be critical consumers of information, as a lot of folks out there try to lie and create confusion and discord and misinterpretations of what lawmakers are doing, of what policymakers are doing, or what we all need to do together to ensure our residents are safe and that our government is making life easier for everyone. So with that, I think our charge is to stay engaged, to stay truthful, to remember the truth will always prevail, to remember that democracy will always prevail, but only if we the people stand for and demand that it does. The bottom line is that the people and the power of the people will always be greater than the people in power, as long as we make sure we exercise that power, and that's our charge. So with that, Jason, I'll turn it back to you, and we'll continue the conversation.
So I think, thank you, Secretary Benson. At this point, we wanted to provide an update, sort of report out on what's going on with lame duck. And I don't know if we want to go in any particular order.
We should be quick in case anybody in the town hall has questions for the secretary.
Yes, so we should give a sort of quick overview of things. Who wants to do it?
I'm not sure we all have to talk, maybe
Oh, okay.
Jason, you go.
I guess here's where I'll start. I guess I can kick us off here and others can add things in. There are 8 million things going on with lame duck, so we will not cover everything in 30 seconds or a minute. But there are a couple things I do want to share. You know, we have been really focused and trying to be focused during this lame duck period on people-focused legislation. For the last couple of years, one of the biggest challenges that we've faced is that everything that we've wanted to do to help people has been up against a lot of money, particularly dark money in our politics and special interest groups and the corporate influence in Lansing. And this is our period of time now. We're trying to get a lot of big things done that really help the people of our state. Unlike when Republicans have been in charge of lame duck in the past, they try and cram through a whole bunch of terrible things. We're trying to push through a lot of really good things on a short timeline. Certainly we have our perspective on those being good things, but I think you could probably look at those things and agree that they are things that are going to help people from a number of things that we've been focused on. Expanding unemployment benefits for our workers who are working hard to restore some of those benefits, protecting against price gouging, working to expand access to affordable energy, anything as simple as making it easier to unsubscribe from annoying subscription services that they lock you into, banning income discrimination in housing. This is something that has been so important that Rep. Conlon and myself and Senator Irwin and a couple of our colleagues have worked on for the last couple years, and it has been worked on by Jeff and others years before that. We finally banned discrimination based on the source of income in Michigan, so that anybody who can afford to pay their rent has the right and ability to rent somewhere, assuming their rent is coming from legal sources. So this is a huge thing. That's something we've been working on for a long time. Senator Irwin's working on eviction expungement to help folks have a second chance. We're working on public safety in our schools. We passed a school safety package. We're tackling sextortion, where folks are being extorted with images and trying to ban that and tackle that. We're tackling sex trafficking. We're really taking on an issue that's been a huge concern here in our state. We're trying to hold gun manufacturers accountable. Legislation passed to ban ghost guns, at least through one chamber. We're making sure that we're destroying guns that are bought back from gun buyback programs. If you sell a gun to a gun buyback program, the understanding is that that weapon is being destroyed. Well, we learned in the New York Times earlier this year that that wasn't happening. So we fixed it immediately in the state legislature. We put that money into Michigan State Police. We fixed that immediately. And we're working on passing legislation through both chambers to make sure that stays in place no matter who's in charge at the governor's office. We have a whole bunch of other things that we're working on, additional LGBTQ rights protections so that you can change your name more easily. That's something that helps everybody to have an easily accessible path to securely changing your name. Protecting religious liberty and police interaction so that folks aren't forced to remove their head coverings when they are being photographed. Protecting indigenous traditions, something that Rep. Rangans is working very hard on, and some others. Protecting abortion providers. I could go on and on about the work that we've been doing, but that's just to give you a flavor of the things that we've been working on. And so the real big update on lame duck is that we have 2 days left in the House and 2 to 3 in the Senate to pass more things. And so we're still working really, really hard to get more things done here in our state. If you are passionate about something, I would look to see if it passed the Senate or the House. If it has, that has a viable chance of getting passed in the next couple of days. You should reach out to your legislators. We probably agree with you if you're in this room, but who knows, maybe not. Maybe there's something you still want to advocate with us on. That is really important because we're going to be prioritizing. We are not going to be able to get everything done that we want to get done, but we're trying like heck to get as much done as we possibly can to help the people of Michigan. So I'll stop there and see if my colleagues have anything particular they want to add.
Senate?
I do want to be brief so that we have as much room for questions as possible, but I'll add a couple things to what Representative Morgan said. As you, I hope, would agree, a lot of what Representative Morgan was talking about were ideas and issues that Democrats have been talking about for a while, and are things like, I think will fall under the heading of what I mentioned earlier, where delivering on issues that are important to our values, and there are more than those, right? I know I'm working on some stuff around foster care and clean energy. We've got some police accountability laws to try to make sure that no-knock warrants are only done in the most extreme circumstances, and that police training improves. All sorts of stuff like that. But what I wanted to talk a little bit about were some of those things I mentioned earlier, which are some of the things we're trying to do to position Michigan's laws to make sure that we protect people's rights in an environment where people's rights are going to be under assault. So I'll use my time just to focus on a couple of those things. So one of the big things we're doing in the Senate, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to get through the House here this week, are some bills around protecting your data. Many other countries are way ahead of the United States on this. Many other states are way ahead of Michigan on this. And there's some really interesting legislation that was reported out of the Michigan Senate last week that seeks to protect our data and make sure that you can have your data retrieved for yourself and not sold for purposes you don't want it to be sold for. But most importantly, we also have legislation 1082, Senate Bill 1082, if my memory serves, that really focuses on reproductive health data. There are all these new apps that track your reproductive health. There's also all sorts of data that retailers have on what products you're buying, and all that data gets bought and sold, and all that data gets used, and you've probably noticed it in what gets advertised to you and what you get coupons for and all of that. Well, what Michigan is trying to do, and what I'm really hopeful that we get done before the end of the year, is a law that broadly protects our data, but another law that really zeroes in on that reproductive health data and makes sure that that is not sold in ways that can put people in danger, and also not sold in ways that can contribute to lawsuits against people who might be traveling here or who might be practicing medicine here in Michigan on someone who might be from somewhere else. And that's why it's so important that we also pass these SHIELD laws, is what we typically call them, which are laws that would say that we're not going to extradite abortion providers to other states where abortion is illegal. We're not going to comply with the data needs of the federal government that has gone out of control and is seeking to attack the rights of people here in the state of Michigan, whose abortion rights are protected by the Michigan Constitution, and hopefully by some additional statutes that we can pass before the end of the year. So many things to talk about, but I wanted to just kind of focus on some of those things that we're doing to try to position the state for the future that we're all facing.
I'll be here. Let's go to the secretary, and I will be here, and I can talk more later.
Okay, do you want to go to questions?
Sure.
Perfect. Yeah, so if you guys, I know there's a couple folks who have index cards, so we'll have Jade go around and go get those from you guys. If you do, just go ahead and raise it up. Otherwise, if you want to ask your question in person, totally do that. You can just line up right here at the front, and then we'll pass off the microphone to you.
Just want answers in the form of a question. In the form of a question. Don't.
Okay, so I worked on Voters Not Politicians for the gerrymandering and then again for expanding voting rights. It was the best experience of my life, I swear to God. And it was something that was across party lines, which everyone recognized and I loved. Now I'm looking at the next thing. And so ranked choice voting is one of the things that is on the table, and I wondered your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you. I think in general, part of the success of the significant reforms to small d democratic democracy reforms that we've seen in Michigan these last few years, part of their success in being so quickly adopted and adapted to by voters has been the fact that they came from voters themselves. And I saw this firsthand. So much of our work is making sure the infrastructure is there, but also our job is to educate voters about how to take advantage of these options. Ranked choice voting is a great example. It's there's certainly a lot of data that shows the ways in which that can expand access to democracy and inform choices in voting. There's also a lot of information about the important need of educating voters about it in order for it to actually achieve the goals of those pushing for it. So because I would say the need for voter education about that is so high, and also we're dealing with an electorate that has quickly adjusted and adapted to many new voting changes over the last several years. All of those things need to be considered going into any effort, and certainly I think, to me, the way to ensure a most successful transition to something like that would be through the ballot initiative process in that regard. Does anyone else want to come?
Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Secretary Benson, for being here. Soumya Rangaraj, I'm a physician here at Michigan Medicine. I've been here, I also went to undergrad here, so I'm a bit of a boomerang. And I'm also an elected member of the Faculty Senate. I'm on what we call SACUA, which is the Senate Advisory Committee on University Affairs. Ever since I joined in May, it's been a really trying time because of, with the Gaza protests and everything. And unfortunately, we're seeing more actual, kind of violent acts against people at the university. You've recently heard about Regent Acker actually has had several incidents at his house, and unfortunately the response to that on social media led to threats against our Faculty Senate chair. And I know that you've been through this. I mean, seeing your husband and son here is, particularly poignant because you've had to face this yourself at your house, as well as Governor Whitmer. And I just want to understand how we can actually unite in the face of these threats, because I certainly was interested in potentially running for faculty chair in a year or two, but that scares me because I have family here, and we want to make sure that we're protected, and I think that's actually going to make some people not want to fulfill political interests because of the threats that might ramp up in the next few months and years.
Thank you for sharing all that and sharing your story. And I started my career in Montgomery, Alabama, investigating hate groups and extremist organizations around the country, and undercover at 19, which is a story for another day. We won't get into that now. But I do remember one evening where I was really worried that because of simply my effort to shine a light on a lot of the hateful and violent things that were coming out of these meetings, that violence would then turn and target me. And I had a moment, I remember very vividly, where I was like, okay, if someone comes and shoots me right now because of this, what am I going to do? How is and I actually got up in that night and just started writing and working and doing the work. And I share that to say, one, threats of violence have unfortunately always been a part of always been woven through, oftentimes, alongside efforts to shine a light on injustice and speak out for those who don't have a voice. And that's a reality of history, and also something that I think we all have to be cognizant of. The second piece of that, and sort of related to the same story, the reason I went to Montgomery wasn't just to work at the Southern Poverty Law Center and do this work, but also because I wanted to understand the successful efforts of justice seeking and movement building in the past, civil rights movement in particular. I mean, in Montgomery, Alabama in 1954, men and women walked to work miles and miles and miles, refused to take the bus, faced threats of arrest and prosecution simply because they wanted to push for an integrated bus system, right? And then you have Selma, Alabama, 60 miles away, where people were beaten and threatened and destroyed or violently used, or even lost her life, simply so that you could see a Voting Rights Act come to fruition that would protect the voices and votes of every citizen in this country and make our democracy live up to the ideals of its founders. And so for me, starting my career rooted in that, was intentional so that I could be both recognize the realities of speaking truth to power and standing up for justice, and also the importance of doing it. Because if those brave citizens hadn't done that work, we wouldn't have a Civil Rights Act or a Voting Rights Act today, right? And so for me, I root myself in that history and that recognition of those who've come before us and what they've endured, out of the knowledge that their eyes are on us now. And they're not expecting the work to be any easier for us than it was for them, but they are expecting us to keep doing the work.
And not only that, when I think about my son, who does see when, you know, this is quite a public meeting, but I will say, you know, we had a bomb threat at our home recently, and we had to deal with that in a very real way. And he, you know, is, you know, seeing that as a consequence of his mom standing up and to Elon Musk and others, right? Like that's real. So I share that with the recognition that what he has seen and what he has reminded me of is that the eyes of the future are on us now too, because he will inherit our work and what we leave behind. And so because of that, in this moment, we have to carry the torch and stand up to anyone, anytime, anywhere who would seek to divide us or spread injustice. Make sure we're doing it with truth and with you know, the law on our side and all of that. And the Constitution, as King said in that beautiful speech on the Montgomery bus boycotts, the law is on our side. The Constitution of the United States is on our side. Justice is on our side. With that, we have to, you know, be prepared to do our part to keep pushing for a better, more fair world, where people are given a fair opportunity to succeed, and recognize all the challenges and consequences that come with that, but also our part in history. And so that's kind of a long way of my approach to it, and then express gratitude and, you know, have the backs of others who are doing that work every day, and to much threat as well. The last thing I'll just say on that is how powerful solidarity can be in those moments. And one of the best things about my job these last few years has been serving with people who are in it for the same reasons I am, and finding ways to link arms and stand together and be part of the work. And through that support, we can actually build stronger bonds and be warriors together. Do you want to add?
I'm just going to add, because I do have a swing district. My district, as I said, goes from Ann Arbor to Howell. And Howell obviously has had a lot of white supremacy, not a lot, but 3 white supremacy marches recently. We had a pretty bad incident.
That's a lot, that's a lot.
That's a lot, we've had a lot. And I did get a call, even a couple right over Thanksgiving, of swastikas up in the Brighton Recreational Center. And so really tough times. But I door knock 15,000 doors up there. That's the area I have to get to know. I have to get those Republicans to know me, those swing voters up there to vote for me. So I knock on those doors that are very hard to knock on. And most people are actually very nice. Even the Republicans who are not for me, most people are nice. And I try to remember that when I'm sort of walking up to a farm with my hands up like, hey, watch out. Most people are nice. And yes, on the night of the election, somebody came and drove over all of our Democratic signs and left a Trump sign there. But, you know, things like that can happen. But I also believe in engaging, and that's what we're going to have to do in this divisive time that we're in, is talk to people, listen to people. I ended up talking to people at the end who had already voted and not for me, and saying, you know what, I think I might win, so tell me what you want me to do for you, and how can I represent you as a Democrat? And so those are the conversations that we really need to have, I think, moving forward, is to try to find what we have in common, and not be scared to have those conversations.
Awesome.
Hi, Leslie Raymond, Ann Arbor Film Festival. Thank you all for the excellent work that you do in representing for us. I'm here to represent for arts and culture. And I think many of you know what happened with the Michigan Arts and Culture grant this year. And I just want to put in a word that so many of our respected arts and culture institutions that make this the place that is worth living and working did not get funding based on clerical error. And I know some of you told me that you will be advocating for us, so I just want to put in a word for that, and just to say, man cannot live by bread alone.
Thank you. I'm just gonna, if I can, you guys are talking, you're singing, you're preaching to the choir, my friend. My kid's a theater kid, and there'll be time when we'll be talking more about this in the future, but I strongly believe that every kid in Michigan should have access to quality arts education. Strongly. I'm aware, I've talked to Gretchen Davidson, and I'm aware, you know, I've made lots of calls on behalf of this particular issue that you're talking about. It's so important to me, not only that, but then when our kids graduate into a career in the arts, that they can do that here in Michigan too, and stay here in Michigan and create heart here as well. And so I'm deeply committed to that, and just want to thank you for the work with the film festival and all that, because that's critical. And there will be time to talk more about that, but I'll turn it over to lawmakers who want to address the immediate issue.
Sure. I think Deb Pollock has a follow-up question, but then I have a follow-up answer.
Sorry.
If-
Also, ours and creative industries person here. Also, arts and creative industry person, the head of the Creative Washtenaw here. I understand that there is a potential supplemental that could add another $5 million, so that those of us that were kicked out of the system because of clerical error. Does anybody have any update on where and how that supplemental might be moving? If not,
I don't
can
know.
we make it move? Thank you.
I did write a letter on behalf of this situation, and said I didn't think it was fair what happened, because I don't think it was fair. And I will check tomorrow to see about the supplemental.
Hello, my name is Dennis Burke. I live here in Ann Arbor, and I have a very boring question for you, perhaps. Michigan no-fault insurance. Why do we call it no fault any longer? We just reviewed our policy update for the coming year, and we had a bunch of new clauses added that any non-full-time resident that is in our car or using our car no longer gets medical coverage. So my wife and I went out and we got a $5 million umbrella policy, and I'm telling my kids that if my grandkids are in the car, sue me. And the contingency law that we have going on for these lawsuits, any of you remember, or you're old enough to remember, the reason why we have no fault law here for insurance is to eliminate lawsuits. So we didn't bankrupt individuals that got injured, and we didn't bankrupt drivers who were driving the other vehicles. So I appreciate trying to lower the costs, but could somebody please comment on what you're going to do to fix this law and go back to no fault the way it should be? Thank you.
I'll take a stab at this, but Senator Irwin is the only one of us who has voted on the original bills that changed our state's no-fault laws that were really pushed hard by then Detroit, or I guess still Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, who really wanted to lower the cost of insurance for the city of Detroit, and it is not lower. And we've been hearing that. When I was campaigning in 2022, a lot of folks were talking about this. You know, they got some $400 check and they were like, but I want ongoing cheaper car insurance, and that has not happened. The car insurance isn't cheaper, and the other thing that we hear about very often in Lansing is the effect that this has had on medical care of people who were receiving medical care and who have been injured since this change. And there have been bills passed out of the Senate that maybe Senator Irwin can talk a little bit more about, but those have died in the House Insurance and Financial Services Committee, despite the best efforts of many of us to demand hearings, and to even demand last week that we discharge them. Since they are Senate bills and they're in the House this week, it is legal for us to vote on them this week. I have not yet seen them on an agenda for this week, but I would love to vote for them. Yeah. So don't give up, and we won't be giving up either. I don't know if Senator Irwin, if you want to add anything.
I'll just add a little bit. So I think Representative Rankin's covered it pretty well. I would just add a couple things. One, I was there in 2019 when the law was changed. I voted no against that change in the law, by the way, just to be clear. And the reason why I voted no is because I didn't think it was going to lower our bills, but it was definitely going to lower the quality of coverage and the universality of the coverage. And I think you made a really good point, sir, in saying that the goal of no fault, and it has pluses and minuses, but one of the really laudable goals was to prevent all the lawsuits and the fighting and the bickering over what care people were going to be entitled to and who was going to pay for it, and just make sure that the care was provided and make sure that it was paid for by the whole system. That was, I think, a laudable goal. The other laudable goal that I want to make sure I mention is that also we don't want to create a situation like we've now started to inch back towards, where it's better to be hit by the Mercedes than the Yugo. right? And so we didn't. Part of the goal of no fault as well was to burn away that injustice of like, well, hopefully the person who hit me has the resources to go after them, because you can't squeeze blood out of a rock, of course. So I wanted to mention that, and Ryan gets mentioned the bills that we crafted in the Senate. And passed out of the Senate really focus on addressing the issue of the long-term attendant care and making sure that people who are catastrophically injured, small percentage of drivers, huge percentage of the cost, that they actually get the care and the long-term care they need. I don't think that really addresses the fundamental concern, though, that you put on the table, which is, could we go back to a more universal system? We certainly could, but the big problem in Michigan is, and I'll try to land this plane, is that the biggest problem is that about 1 out of 7 drivers are not even buying insurance. And so those costs have to be picked up by others. And so then you get these like spiraling upward vortex of cost in certain neighborhoods, like you see in the city of Detroit, like you see in lots of places around the state, and then more people drop off. And that's really the problem we need to solve. I think we need to end geographic rating and go to only allowing insurance companies to make your rates based on driving factors and driving factors alone. But one of the things that you learn if you pay close attention to Lansing, and everyone should pay close attention to Lansing, one of the things you learn is that the insurance lobbies are very, very powerful. And everyone's talking about this historic Democratic trifecta, first Democratic control in 40 years, first time that Democrats have controlled the state Senate since the Atari 2600 was released. So you can tell sort of how I judge my life, how old I am maybe. But we only had a 1-vote majority in each chamber. And so just like the challenges that I think that Democrats in DC had, where maybe a Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema would stop a particular bill, same is true for us when we're trying to take on big lobbies like the insurance companies or the utilities. You've got almost all the Democrats versus all of the Republicans plus 1 or 2 Democrats, and we just need a little bit bigger majority, I think, to get over the hump on these tough issues.
Hello? Okay, it's okay if I switch gears a lot. I'll build on that. So I'm a native of New Jersey. Yay, Bruce Springsteen. My wife and I both went to college here, Rutgers. We grew up, and then we decided to move to suburban Philadelphia to raise our children. I'm going to do some name dropping here. Josh Shapiro's home district is where we worked throughout our political career. We helped it go from, red, believe it or not, purple to blue. Madeline Dean is now the congresswoman. We retired and we had grandchildren, and my child, one of our children, moved us to California, San Jose, California, which was very, very blue where we were. And Zoe Lofgren, I'm going to do it again, drop names, 15-term Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, okay? So living in Northern California, in San Jose, we lived in a Democratic bubble, very much like the bubble I'm standing in right now, right? And what Zoe had us do, so this is a political question, I apologize for that if there's other people here who aren't political. What Zoe had us do was get up on weekends and canvass 1 to 2 hours away into the Central Valley of California, obviously to switch as many legislative seats and congressional seats as possible. The best thing California can do for America, in my opinion, was to stay blue. New Jersey, stay blue. Pennsylvania, maybe get there. But one of the things I like about Michigan, having grown up on the Jersey Shore and then living on the Pacific Coast, is you have a lot of water. And I appreciate that. I mean, thank you for that. But I know you guys, if you got up in the morning on Saturday morning as a group, the Ann Arbor Democrats, whatever you want to call yourself, Washtenaw County Democrats, got into some buses. There's Democrats all over this beautiful state, and they need our help. And I guarantee you they will be appreciated. I knocked on doors in very red districts. There were Democrats there. They were so happy to see a Democratic face. And this is California. These people would say, I've never seen a Democrat. So I thank Zoe Lofgren for having that vision. And I'm asking you as Democrats, not as office holders right now, but as members of the Democratic Party in Michigan, does the Michigan Democratic Party have a strategy to engage these voters in other parts of the state with the help of those of us here in the bubble.
Jason, you're first vice chair of the party. Yeah. But this is a taxpayer funded event.
Yes, but we are at an official event, so there's only so much that I think we can talk about in terms of political, direct partisan political issues. But I guess I would say this. I really can't speak on behalf of the Democratic Party at an event like this. Outside of my role here, I serve as first vice chair of the Michigan Democratic Party. But I'll say this, I'm from rural northern Michigan. I grew up in Pinconning, Michigan on a commercial fishery. I went to college up in northern Michigan in the Upper Peninsula at the Northern Michigan University up in Marquette. My first job was working for a state senator up there and later a congressman up there. And over these last really 17 years, I've spent my entire life campaigning in every part of the state of Michigan. From the most red areas of the Upper Peninsula in 2008 for Barack Obama, to the bluest parts of Ann Arbor in my district today, and all over the state. Many of us, all of us, have campaigned all over the state for a lot of our colleagues in the state legislature. And I think that there's been a consistent theme that I found, certainly this cycle, is that people just want to be treated decently. They want fairness, they want integrity, they want to be able to raise a family by working 40 hours a week. They want to be able to buy a home and have it be at least reasonably affordable instead of 3 or 4 times what it used to be a few years ago. They want to be able to buy a car. It doesn't have to be a Mercedes, but it can be a beat up old car a few years old as long as it gets them down the road. And we have a lot of people who want us to be better as government officials. They want us to be accountable to them instead of these big corporate interests. They want us to be accountable to doing things that help improve their everyday lives and putting food on the table. And they don't want us engaged in every hot button issue of the day or everything that makes the news or everything that makes somebody angry. They just want us focused on the things that help make their daily lives a little bit easier, and where they can take care of their kids, take care of their family, have clean air and safe drinking water, and get down the road without getting a flat tire, and go to the Secretary of State without waiting 5 hours, the basics of government. Those are the types of things that I've seen. But I don't know that I've heard that message from folks who are in the party as a whole over these last few years. And I think we've got to get back to that message. That message focused on working people, working class issues, and kitchen table issues that resonate with people every single day. So I can't answer your question in more detail at an official event, but I can tell you that that is the thank you. I'm sitting next to a lawyer here, but I can tell you that's what I have seen in my years of work. And I think we've got to get back to some of those things as we go forward.
Right, and you have to engage them. And like Jeff said, there's one party that's on the side of big corporate interests. He made it very clear. So if they're really interested in improving their life, I hope we can elect more Democrats with the help of all you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, and I hope we can chat after this meeting. But one of the things I want to talk about in my official role, I'm chair of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. And my chief of staff and I, we both come from rural areas. We've both spent a lot of time farming. And we've both mostly lived in places where it's more Republican than Democrat. Like in my precinct, I was a township trustee in Northfield Township, but honestly, I don't know that I'd win now because the politics have actually shifted right. And so one of the things that I've understood from growing up, my dad, who I'm really worried about tonight, he's a full-on Trumper, and he was actually like going after me on Facebook prior to the election. So I live this life. And one of the things that I've learned is that people oftentimes vote against their own interests, and that people who live in rural areas and people who live in urban areas, I mean, it doesn't really matter where they live. There's a lot of stuff that we all care about, and a lot of it is the same, like what Representative Morgan was talking about. We all have a lot of things that we care about as Michiganders, just as people, as women, as men, as whatever, whoever we are. And one of the things that I've realized is people aren't who they vote for, they vote for people. And so one of the things we can do as elected officials and as community members is try to work on what are those shared priorities. And Representative Morgan talked about a lot of them. And the reason I'm giving you all this backstory on this is that one of the things my chief of staff and I have been doing and are going to be working on as we go forward in this next session is developing an agenda of shared values that aren't partisan. And then we're going to work really hard in a nonpartisan way as best we can, because we're in a very partisan situation in the legislature, but we do work on bipartisan issues and we do work across the aisle. So we're going to work on that bipartisan agenda. Whether the other party works with us or not is not my, we're going to do this. So we're gonna address people's needs and see where that goes. So I just wanted you to know that.
We were ending at 7, is that right? So we want to, so that those folks in line will get to all your questions. We'll try to speak succinctly as well. And I know we've got a lot of note cards as well we want to get to, so keep going.
Okay, great. Okay, hi, my name is Allie Dershevitz. I'm part of College Dems. I have 2 quick questions. So, thank you. Yeah, go College Dems. So in the past week, in response to President-elect Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on Canada, some Canadian MPs have said that they would consider cutting off energy to some states in the U.S., including Michigan. I don't know if you've heard of this, but in that case, is there anything the Michigan legislature could do to protect citizens in Michigan? And in general, in the case of a trade war, what are some things that can be done to just protect the economy of Michigan since we're such a big trading hub?
Trade policy is not our job.
Yeah, trade.
Trade policy is usually my husband's category as a former U.S. Trade Representative employee. I think that's a very detailed question. I guess I would say I don't know that that's necessarily most of us here at the state level having an answer to that immediately, but one of the big things I think is making sure that we have a state relationship with Canada as well, and I know Governor Whitmer and other folks have worked very hard to have some of those relationships across the border with Canada, and so I think that's really important. Frankly, we don't know what the Trump administration is going to do in terms of trade policy or trade relations or in terms of relations with other nations. It has traditionally been pretty challenging is the nicest I think of, I think I can say that. And so I don't know that we know yet, but I think the important thing is making sure that we have our own relationship as the state of Michigan with our Canadian counterparts and that we're working with them. And they do spend some time here in Michigan pretty regularly. They do work in Lansing, they have regular outreach, there's regular engagement with legislators and with the governor's team. So we won't be on our own. If there's tension at the federal level, we will be able to have a partnership there as well.
I just want to say something extremely briefly, which is that we do have an obligation, I'm not sure what we can do to stop it, but we do have an obligation to sound the alarm, because I don't think people in Michigan know, and I know that people around the country don't know how important Canada is to us, and particularly to Michigan and to our auto industry. We need to keep banging that drum. And then also, I think this is an opportunity for people like me who care about clean energy and who know that we're never going to drill our way to energy independence in Michigan, to use this as an opportunity to point out to folks that if we control our own energy supply, if we get more and more from solar and wind, the better off we are against foreign disturbances.
Hi, my name is Eli. I'm also in College Dems. I saw in the House recently that the defense budget bill passed, including support from 80 Democrats, has yet to go to the Senate, I believe. It's had some very alarming things about transgender people in it. Since it has yet to go to the Senate, there's still time to change that. So I was wondering specifically what Senator Shink and Irwin, what you were going to do about that and how you would vote.
That's a federal.
That's all federal stuff, so that we don't have an opportunity to vote on that, but I will take the opportunity to say that we are working on some legislation. I think the House really took the first leadership on some legislation to make sure that we improve how gender markers operate and how those are assigned and changed on people's licenses. That's one thing that's happening right now that it shows that we're trying to take action to make sure we protect the rights of trans people.
Yes.
Hi. Going back a little bit, one of the best things I think I've seen in Michigan politics in this century was when Jennifer Granholm went around the state and had all her dialogues all over the state, and surprisingly developed a reasonable consensus on a whole bunch of issues, and then we did nothing with it, for whatever reason. We have 3 wonderful statewide people right now, a governor, an attorney general, secretary of state, and maybe we can get those people to go out and start a dialogue. We've got 2 years to do that. And this is the perfect time to do that because there's probably not going to be a lot happening in Lansing other than us trying to project ourselves. A second thing I'd like to suggest, which is Mr. Irwin's idea, and you've got 14 days to do it. Can we get the legislature to put a broadly based, accepted proposal on the ballot for 2026 before the end of the year?
For what?
I don't care what it is. The question is, if we look at Michigan and we say, oh, here's something that 75% of the people want, and all Democrats happen to want, that's a good thing to put on the ballot for A, driving out just more people, but more of the people like us.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take them both so we can keep it. First, you know, I will say every night this week I've been in a different community in the state. Saturday I was in Garden City, Sunday I was in Traverse City, yesterday I was in Kalamazoo, and here I am tonight. We are going all around the state. I am, and in many cases Dana did before the election. We recognize the importance of that, and we'll be doing even more of that in the new year. So I appreciate that suggestion. And in my view, I would just say I think we've certainly seen a lot of policy driven through ballot initiatives over these last several years. The best and most successful ones come from the people and come from the grassroots, and we've got some time to see what initiatives percolate and emerge through 2026. It is important, I can say, as the person who has had to implement 3 of those initiatives, the independent citizens redistricting and the 2 promote the vote initiatives. It's really important they be well written and workshopped before getting on the ballot to avoid unintended consequences. But all that said, I do believe in the power of a truly people-driven initiative process to move good policy, and I think that's what we've seen in Michigan these last few years.
Thank you. My name is Jordana Latosas. I'm the president and founder of a 501c3 nonprofit, the Recovery Mobile Clinic. We run a very, I like your analogy, a very purple clinic. It's kind of split right down the middle, which goes to show that bipartisan access to health care is important to everybody on both sides of the aisle. Senator Irwin, you proposed Senate Bill 279, the Full Practice Authority, which is a nurse practitioner full practice authority movement. What we're trying to do is get it out of the health committee, get it voted on, and get it back over to the vote. I know we're probably not going to be able to do that this year, but how do we kind of keep that momentum kind of going for full practice authority for nurse practitioners, so clinics like ours can do exactly what we're trying to do, which is increase access to health care, break down kind of the barriers to health care, and increase the access to primary care, mental health, and substance use disorder.
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Senate Bill 279. If you don't know, it's a great bill that would improve healthcare access here in the state of Michigan. But unfortunately, because of the timing where we are in the calendar, unless more days are added to the calendar by the speaker, the bills are now dead for reasons in the Constitution that just haven't moved quickly enough to be able to get all the way through the process. So what can you do going forward? I would encourage you to continue attending events like this, building relationships with your representative and senator, whoever that is, and working with groups and associations that are also focused on this, right? I think one of the biggest things we need to do is we need to build the support in some of the areas where we most need to shore up healthcare access. So in some of those rural areas and some of those underserved urban areas, and get some of the lawmakers who represent those areas to get excited about the opportunity here. This is how the VA does it. This is how I think over like 20-some states now do it this way. And what we mean by it is we allow nurse practitioners to practice within the full scope of their training. Whereas here in Michigan right now, we've got a lot of nurse practitioners that are out there running clinics. They see the patient, they diagnose, they prescribe, but they have to pay a doctor somewhere off-site a monthly contract. There are differing opinions as to whether or not that kind of supervision provides value to the end user, the patient, to the public. From the way I explain it, obviously I don't, but other folks who get that money have a different view.
Perfect. So our first written question, it's pretty highly upvoted. It's, is there a chance that community solar will be voted on before the end of the session?
No, for the same reasons that I just explained. I'm also the sponsor of the community solar legislation in the Senate. It's bipartisan. I've been working with my colleague and friend Senator McBroom from the Upper Peninsula. This has been a long-standing bipartisan coalition around energy freedom, but what is also bipartisan, unfortunately, is support for whatever it is our utilities want. And so I don't think it's going to get voted on, but it should. And what community solar is it's an opportunity for individual customers of the utility to buy subscriptions into a solar array that isn't on your property, but then get the energy from that and have it credited on your bill as if the solar panels were on your property. This is smart because larger arrays are more efficient. You get more energy per dollar, and we like energy per dollar. Also, we have a lot of sites that are really appropriate for community solar in Michigan. A lot of old brownfields, you get these medium-sized sites where you could put medium-sized arrays and serve the needs of people, get clean energy, make our grid more resilient. Triple bottom line winner. But no, not this year, unfortunately.
So,
Well,
is this on?
I can do it, but it's not super efficient.
Is yours on?
I got it, there you go. So we do have a hard stop at 7, and so we are, maybe like one more question, then we gotta go.
But I think a lot of folks can stay and speak informally if you still have questions, so yeah. But
Yeah, exactly. So
we know
we'll-
folks have to leave at 7, I don't want people to have to, so.
There we go, so we'll do one more question, and then we will wrap up, and then we'll be around after a few of us.
So this one's probably geared more towards you, Brett Morgan. Please update us on the Bright Act legislation moving and see if it will be passed before the end of lame duck.
Yes.
Well, certainly our favorite question at the end here,
Great
this
way
is
to
something
end
that a lot of us here have worked on. So there is something called the Bright Act, which is comprehensive. It's a, where is this darn thing? So there's a ringing here. So the Bright Act is a package of legislation around campaign finance reform, transparency in our elections, ethics reform, and a number of things that we have worked on over the last couple of years to try and tackle the dark money in our politics, to try and get at some of the root causes that are stopping us from doing a lot of legislation that will help people and holding entities accountable for their influence in our elections, in our politics, in our political system in Lansing. And so this is something that Secretary Benson has been a huge champion of, along with, I've been a key sponsor of that, Rep. Brian Gins, and everybody else has been extremely supportive of that. We were able to pass one piece of the package through the House, which is now over into the Senate, and we're hopeful we can get that piece through to allow the Secretary of State's office to have some real-time, what's that?
Is it that one over there? That one?
No, it's off.
Okay.
Real-time enforcement of campaign finance violations. So if somebody's violating campaign finance law, we'd like the Secretary of State's office to be able to petition a court to intervene immediately. There we go. Oh, maybe that's it. Well, we got it. This will work. And so this is a really important piece of legislation. We will hopefully get a little piece of it through this year to give you a shorter answer. But then this is something we're going to have to keep working on. We also think that we can make this a bipartisan package. Again, to the question earlier about what everyday people want out of their elected officials, they want good government. They want to be able to trust their government again, and today they don't. And so we're trying to restore trust in our government, whether it's working with Democrats, Republicans, Independents, whoever it is. We're going to work with everybody to try and restore trust in our government by passing this legislation called the Bright Act and other legislation that we can work on. certainly with Secretary Benson and all of this team up here, we're going to be working together on that. So thank you for that question.
And I'll just say, you know, if whatever doesn't get passed, there's always the ballot initiative process. So take note, leaders in the field. And thank you all also again for coming here tonight. Really appreciate it. I know we've got lots more questions to get to. We'll stick around and continue these conversations in the hours, months, weeks ahead as well. And our only ask, I think, of all of you is to join us and stay on the battlefield with us. Because our history in Michigan shows that when we all do lock arms and work together on all these things that we've talked about tonight, we can be successful, and we will be successful. And in my view, this next decade in Michigan will require us all, if we want to be successful, to stick together, to work together, just as we've been doing these last few years, and to keep getting things done for the people of Michigan. So thanks for your help so far, and onward we go. Thank you.